Good evening all. It is my privilege to introduce today's moderator, Ms. Shubhasree Madhavan. Ms. Shubhasree has an impressive background with 12 years of experience as a TGT science teacher. She has undergone extensive training in STEM education, including 60 hours conducted by IIT Gandhinagar, and is certified in STEM education for senior secondary students. Her contributions include reviewing and creating video lesson plans for IISER and online portals, as well as participating in the Water Classroom project for middle school students with the Living Water Museum, IISER. Additionally, she has been part of the Knowledge Exchange program between the University of Glasgow and Indian teachers on sustainable development and has been recognized as an innovation champion through the IRIS program at IISER. Pune. Her dedication to advancing STEM education and sustainable development is truly commendable. Hearty welcome, Ms. Shubhasree. Please proceed. We wish you all the best.
Salam, sir. Can you go ahead?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Please.
Good evening, everyone, and warm greetings from Extra Mile to our distinguished group of teachers and educators. Extra Mile, founded by the visionary Dr. Abdul Salam of BTAG, is an allied platform for both online and offline training. With a strong network of expert trainers, Extra Mile is poised to deliver on-demand, on-set training throughout India. Before we begin, I would like to express my heartfelt gratitude to Dr. Abdul Salam Sir and Extra Mile Education and Training for this wonderful opportunity. A warm welcome to all the participants as we embark on this enriching journey focusing on question paper preparation and mastering its strategies. Continuing its mission of innovation, BTAG and Extra Mile Education and Training with the expertise of the exceptionally talented resource person, Ms. Kyati Dwarkadas, are excited to share valuable insights during this session. I'm privileged to welcome Dr. Abdul Salam Sir, a distinguished CBSE resource person and master trainer who has made significant contributions to the education sector. Dr. Salam Sir served as an assessor for the National Accreditation Board for Education and Training under Government of India. He is also the visionary founder and CEO of Extra Mile Education and Training and Bharat Transformers Academic Group. Sir, I invite you to deliver the welcome address.
Thank you, ma'am. Good evening, everybody. Good evening, respected resource person, Ms. Kyati, Viju sir, and all the educators who have joined. Very glad to welcome you all on board of Extra Mile Education and Training. Well, this is a very important topic Madam has, offered to us, which will give us a lot of insights on how to prepare meticulous question papers in a very easy way. Of course, setting question paper is it's a tedious task, which everybody finds it's difficult. But there are ways and means for every issues. There will be solutions. So there are ways and means which we have to take care of. If you are very careful of a few tips and tricks, Madam will be giving us those tips and tricks. We can make the question papers in a very meticulous way, following the blueprints and all. So let us listen to Kyati ma'am. Kyati ma'am, thank you so much for offering this session. We are very sure that this will give us a lot of inputs as usual. Thank you so much. Let us listen to ma'am. Let us sit back and enjoy the session, definitely. All the very best to everybody. Hearty welcome once again. Over to Shubhasree ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, Salam Sir, for the warm introduction and setting the stage for today's discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, we are also privileged to have Mr. Viju S. Pillai Sir, the co-founder of BTAG, with us. With vast experience in the education sector, including his role as principal of several renowned CBSE schools, Mr. Pillai has made significant contributions to the field. Sir, it is a true honor to have you here with us today. I now invite you to address the gathering and share your valuable insights.
Good evening, all. Thank you, Shubhasree ma'am.
Yes.
Respected Program Director Abdul Salam sir, today's resource person, Kyati ma'am, and all other educators. I think today children are also participating. So, my dear children and teachers, It's a very important topic, as our moderator and directors have told. Why? Because there are two or three main things once the board examination is over. When they come out of their room, when the teachers ask them in great anxiety, how was the exam? Sometimes children will be disappointed, telling that the question was not direct. It was application level questions. We didn't get the time. So keeping it all in our to prepare the question paper. So my humble request to all my educators are, most probably the questions will be coming from the textbook only. So in whichever way we can make application level questions depending upon or looking into the previous question papers. In the meanwhile, we have to make maximum one-word questions, case studies, and we can take much of the tips from today's resource person, respect ma'am also. She will be helping all the way. And my humble request is the all should start preparing the questions and you can discuss, because now here you have around more than 100 days. So this is a valuable time how we can utilize it properly in a very skillful way and with a cool mind, so that you will not have any sort of tensions, and after once or three or four model you will be well prepared to get ready to attempt the questions, whatever you are going to appear for the board examination. So wishing you all the very best. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you all. Thank you. Back to Shubhasri ma'am.
Thank you, Biju sir. The room is full, and this session is exclusively for teachers. No student has joined. For the information of Khyati ma'am, it is for only teachers, no students.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your kind words, Bijut sir. Dear educators, now we shall proceed to the highlight of today's webinar. So before I begin, I would request all the participants to kindly rename yourself with your own name. Yeah. Thank you. A question paper tests how well a student can demonstrate that they have acquired the knowledge, understanding, and skill set in the specification. Hence, framing effective question paper is a very important process to stimulate and motivate learners, enhance learning, and understand the competence of learner. So today, amidst us, we have Ms. Khyati Dwarkadas, the resource person for today's session, who's going to help us in setting question papers easily and meticulously. I welcome you, ma'am. A veteran educator with 25 years of experience, serving as head of the department at Gopi Birla Memorial School, recognized as an innovation ambassador by the Ministry of Education. Her forward-thinking pedagogy has garnered accolades including the Rotary International Presidential Citation for Community Service. Ms. Dwarkadas is a recipient of numerous awards and honors, including the Lifetime Achievement Award and Innovative Head of Department Award from Educatio World, the Susma Swaraj Women Icon Award for Women Empowerment, and the Acharya Chanakya Shikshavid Samman, Global Teacher Award and the International Teachers Guild Award. Ms. Khyati is just not an educator, but a visionary leader, catalyst for change and beacon of excellence in education. Ma'am, it's truly a privilege to have you with us as a speaker today. Session on question paper preparation and mastering its strategies. On behalf of everyone present here, I extend a warm and heartfelt welcome to you. This will be an opportunity for all of us to learn through your insights. Now, I invite you to take the charge for the proceedings for today's evening.
Thank you very much, ma'am. And thank you for the opportunity, Dr. Salam and Biju sir, as well as everyone at Team Extra Mile Training. Wishing everyone a very happy Diwali and a very prosperous New Year. And thank you for inviting me just immediately after the Diwali break into a paper setting session, where we will discuss all kinds of questions that one can set, the types of questions that one can set in the paper, because now I believe every educator from every part of the globe would be bang on into prelims and post prelims and God knows mock tests to help all the students do very well at the board exam. So let's begin. Let me just share my screen. and we shall immediately begin. I think I am visible to all.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, yes.
Yes. And the screen also seems to be visible. Yes. So we're going to talk about designing a question paper. However, before we begin with actual designing of a question paper, I want to show you a class where we start teaching by asking. That, it's when we ask the right questions at the right time to the group of students that we are dealing with, we start giving them a curiosity into our classrooms. So a true question paper setting would normally begin in our minds from our classrooms. So teaching by asking is a very important strategy. Now, what do? We make students work in pairs or smaller groups to answer questions. And each group will have a scribe or one person taking down the points, writing the stronger ideas on the board, and topping up the answer with additional points. So instead of saying today we will begin with this chapter, so and so chapter, and just jotting it down on the board, the teacher can ask questions and arouse the curiosity. And you can see some examples on screen where the teacher would ask questions like what methods are used to market food products and make the children think, or what do you think photosynthesis, or why do you think photosynthesis happens in the day? Or you can use a particular set of methods to solve a math problem and give a small calculation to do. There are many things that we educators can do in the classroom to make our classrooms more interactive, more lively, and to make a bright spark in the minds of the students. So the power of one question, as I told you, we can ask a question in the classroom and you can ask the students, because many children may want to answer the question you have asked. The teacher here in this case wants the students to write it down in their notebooks so that they can discuss there. It is a very simple strategy where the teacher is asking the students to write down the question to be fair to all, to give everyone a chance to participate in the class, not just that single one hand or those multiple hands that are going up. Now you can see there are so many children who raised their hands who are going to be answering. They have all developed a curiosity in their minds in the question that the teacher has asked. Probably they were speaking about microorganisms. And this is how the teacher and the students begin with a class. So why did the teacher ask students to write down their answer? She wanted children to improve their writing skill, or she wanted them to think more. You may use the chat box. You can type A or B in the chat. Shruti Nair ma'am says B. And now I can see many B's coming in. Is it because one said B? Neha Singh says A, and somebody said A and B both. The correct answer has to be B. Here we are talking about asking a question before the beginning of the class. So it's not always that a writing skill would improve with this particular question. Children may quickly just jot down a couple of words in this case. So it may not necessarily test a writing skill. So it may not help improve a writing skill, but a thinking skill will definitely improve. And this is what I told you. They were speaking about microorganisms. And that's how a curious class begins. So want your students to learn deeply, encourage them to think on their own. Ask them the right kind of questions, the thought-provoking questions, and give them that minute to think. So when you give them a minute to think and assimilate all that you were trying to tell them, it automatically raises curiosity. Coming to our main topic today, question paper setting. designing, strategizing. So you can see we have color-coded some alphabets and numbers. So assessment of learning is what is being learned finally. Assessment for learning is how is the learning progressing. Assessment as learning is how learning is being internalized. And finally, you can see how learners are being engaged in the classroom. Now, what do we mean? What are the objectives of assessing the students? We are incorporating specific skill sets and values across domains at each stage of learning. We move towards real understanding and learning and away from the culture of rote learning. And we are trying to create holistic, well-rounded individuals equipped with the key 21st century skills. Now, we cannot be assessing students randomly. We need to assess them based on the objectives that we are setting forth. And this, of course, all the brilliant educators at Extra Mile already are aware that we have internal assessments up to grade 10, which add to the total of the board exam 80 mark. Objective type questions, we have MCQs, we have competency-based, source-based, case-based questions, we have the descriptive type questions, and we have free response questions which focus on competencies beyond recall and understanding. Of course, then they do talk about two-level examination provisions being given for math, and now other subjects are also coming up, and provision for improvement examination post the board examination. And presently, we have multiple kinds of assessments. So we have internal periodic assessments, which include pen paper tests, multiple modes of assessment, which are your, you can use multiple intelligences for multiple modes of assessment. You have portfolios, subject enrichment activities. Finally, you have a 80-mark paper, which is your 33% internal choice, inclusion of objective type questions and competency-based questions. And this year, competency-based questions are set to be at dash percentage. Let me see the chat. This year, board exam 2025 will have dash percentage of competency-based questions. Fill in the blank. Seema Krishnan, Anuradha Kulkarni, Shania John, it's not yet at 60. But the others are very true at 50%. Yes, it is 50%. Tilotama and Sujata, the board has made it 50% from this year onward. So 2025 board exam will have 50% competency-based assessment. So I'll clap for all those of you who got it right. Salam sir, maybe one morning we will definitely get something like this in the Extra Mile quiz. Percentage of competency-based assessment questions, seeing that not everyone is currently getting it right. And then you can see over there, class 12 and 11. You have project work in all subjects, or you have internal assessment of practicals in all subjects for grade 11 and 12, either 20 or 30 marks, depending on the subject. And the final board exam would again be 70 or 80 marks, depending on the marks of internal assessment. In grades 11 and 12, a student would be expected to pass individually in the internal and the external exam. So when we are setting a question paper, our base is the Bloom's taxonomy. And the revised Bloom's taxonomy, which was revised around the year 2000 by Lauren Anderson and Krathol, is the one we shall be dealing with. So let's take a quick look. We start with remembering, understanding or comprehending, applying, analyzing, evaluating, and creating. Remembering or recalling facts is the lowest order. Understanding is also a lower order. Apply would go into, or even understand and apply could get into middle order, depending on the kind of questions you're asking. Whereas analyze, evaluate, and create get into the higher order. And when we are setting a paper, these are the basics we need to keep in mind. A paper should not be something where a child comes out and says, it's the easiest paper. It's easy for the ones who've studied art. It should be average for most, and it should be difficult for those who haven't worked. It cannot be easy for those who haven't worked at all. If it is so, in that case, you are not challenging the bright ones. So the paper should be a little challenging. And when you set a challenging paper, it should challenge even the paper setter. Keep that in mind. You can keep a screenshot of these verbs. These are useful verbs from the Bloom's taxonomy, which help you to choose the level of question you are setting. So if you were just testing a recall, then you could say define or identify or illustrate. Something very simple, name, mention, list. But once you start moving upwards to understanding, applying, analyzing, evaluating, and creating, you can see the difference in words. The verbs used here help the student and the paper setter understand the level of the question. So just classify the types of soils, or discover could be a nice word to apply some knowledge that the student has learned. Or sometimes we use this very fancy thing. Imagine all the oil resources depleted one day. What would the world look like? So you are asking a child to move beyond the knowledge and understanding, analyze and apply their knowledge, and maybe even create something new. Because if you ask them to imagine a world without oil resources, or the 100% depletion of oil resources, they would have to come up with a new kind of a world. So that would automatically lead you to creation. Then we need to look at competency-based paper setting. And before we go to that, we need to understand that competency-based assessment is used to focus on removing logical contradictions. By competency-based assessment, learners learn how to establish logical consequences. It involves structure of assessment by rejecting or modifying that reflects on higher order thinking or the learning zone. So automatically you're touching upon the higher order thinking skills, and it is a powerful tool for critical thinking. So we need to keep critical thinking in mind when we are talking about competency-based assessments. Now, in competency-based assessments, we do have pre-response questions. And the CBSE has given us these 6 major guidelines for pre-response questions. One such guideline talks about test understanding of concept and not just a mere recall of facts. Test core learning and not peripheral facts. Use familiar format of questions to differentiate real learning from apparent learning. Use real-life, authentic contexts that students can relate to. Use stimulus material as needed and test required skills. Use authentic data, maps, graphs, or any other information that is related to the concept you are testing and is relevant. Also, while setting a question paper, I've done this before when we did item writing, when we did learning outcomes in pedagogies too. I have mentioned this time and again that always we as educators, we believe in testing what the students know and not what they don't know. Hence, always ask yourself this question before you set a paper. What do I want the students to know? And what do I want them to demonstrate? What skills? So what knowledge and what skills are you testing in your question paper? Then you align the question paper with the learning outcomes, because that is the knowledge and skill that you have planned, as well as with the Bloom's taxonomy, so that you have equal weightage to every possible question. So you have all the 6 parts of the Bloom's taxonomy of the cognitive domain here, which is normally tested in a 80-mark paper. So coming back to pre-response questions, now here is the very first sample question, testing understanding of a concept. This question is asking the student to identify a common characteristic of all the regions shaded on a world map. You can mention in the chat box if you know the answer. If you know the answer, you can mention in the chat box what the shaded areas stand for. Admin, beautiful. Yes. A lot of people have now started answering, and I realize that people do understand that the shaded area is a peninsula, and for a fact that the child is able to identify what a peninsula is, and automatically the child is able to define a peninsula when you have asked what is common to these shaded areas. So it's a very tricky way of asking a very simple concept. You will not ask the child to define, but without knowing the definition, the child cannot identify. That's another one. You have a recall of a trivial fact here. What is the temperature of the sun? And a recall of an important fact, at what temperature does water boil? Now, when you see the difference in the two questions, both are testing recall. But question 2 tests recall of something that doesn't really have any much implication on the understanding of a student. Whereas, at what temperature does water boil is going to make the student think about the boiling point of water. If different answers are received in sample 3 and you start analyzing them as a teacher, the teacher or the paper setter would be able to identify specific wrong notions of the students and will be able to rectify them in the next class. So this is very important. Don't merely test simple recall of trivial facts. Test what is important, what a child should know. Use unfamiliar format of questions to differentiate real learning from apparent learning. So you have a sample here. Normally, mathematics teachers, no offense please, but mathematics teachers would normally give you this kind of a question. What is the perimeter of this rectangle? And the child would be asked to write the answer. But when you look at sample 5, which of these shapes has or have a perimeter? And these are different shapes. So if we have any mathematics educators, the chat is open for you. Or if you are even a non-mathematic educator and you know the answer, the chat is open at all points in time. Even without my asking, I love people writing answers in the chat. It gives me a lot more energy to take on a session. So I can see starting from shape 1, I have people answering shape 1 and 2, both have a perimeter. And now I see some Santosh Ji writing 1, 2 and 3 have a perimeter. Wow. It's only to the mathematics teachers who can answer these kind of questions. But these are samples you should be aware of. You should be able to use them. These are examples given where, as a mathematics paper setter, of course, you have more difficult concepts to test. Then use real life authentic contexts that students can relate to. Now, this is also a little difficult one. Shown here is an infrared image of a pencil. Check the temperature of the writing tip of the pencil. Give one reason why the tip is showing this temperature compared to the rest of the pencil. Now you can see a regular camera, you can see the camel or something in an infrared camera. Obviously, the paper setter has given this for the student to understand what an infrared image would normally look like from, and how different would it look like from a normal image. And then the paper setter has also shown you this infrared pencil. So by viewing objects with the thermal infrared camera, we can actually see the differences between warm and cold objects. And for example, we can use the temperature scale on the right side of the infrared image to find out the temperature range of different objects in the image. And this is on the Fahrenheit scale. If you read next to the pencil, it is 84 degrees Fahrenheit. So a student who's learned the concept would be able to answer it. Then we have questions using stimulus material. So if you're an educator in Mumbai, you would know how much of the city and the suburbs now have been dug up for the metro rail. And this is a very contextual question. So irrespective of the subject you are teaching, you can see this map of Mumbai, which is showing you a completely dug up city. So state two things about which the map does not provide any information and justify your answer. So there's a scale given. There's a vicinity given. It starts with the Back Bay Harbor, the Bombay Harbor, and it goes right up. So Mahim Bay, etc., and it goes into there. They've shown you the rail, etc. And obviously, the student who would be studying this kind of a thing would read the map. A port, metro railway line, railway stations, and Catholic churches are some of the features found in the present-day Mumbai. Which of them are not likely to be represented in maps created in the early 20th century? Justify your answer. So this is a very good question to make a student think way back in history. Why would some of these things not be in the 20th century map? So for those of us who forgotten history, Lord Dalhousie started the first railway Mumbai to Thane in the 1850s. So which of these, a port, a metro railway, or a railway station, or a Catholic church is not likely to be on the present, are not likely to be represented there? So obviously the metro railway line, Catholic churches could have been there because Christian missionaries were already doing their conversions. East India companies come in the year 1600. So 1600 to the 1850s, a lot of conversion and a lot of Christianity had already spread. But a metro line could not have been there on the map of the 20th century, early 20th century. Question using data from an authentic report. Can Africa feed the world? And here you have a complete data on Africa. And each time that you see data given, like even if you see it here in the map, it shows you where the map has been taken from. Here the data is telling you where the source, where is it sourced from. So what aspects of the infographic make it factual? Not based on personal opinion, graphical representation, what makes it factual? You can keep writing in the chat. That will make you feel active learners. We are all here to learn from each other. I master my subject, but I'm not the master of all. I am happy to learn from all of you. What is the main purpose of the infographic? Explain your answer in up to 200 words. So it's a good 5-mark question where the purpose of this infographic is being asked. The child has to think and write. It's not a direct question where you read the infographic and just tell us about it. And then you give a suitable title to the infographic and explain why you are giving that particular title. This also makes the child think about why are they going to give the same title. In the olden days, we used to get just a title or caption the infographic, and we could have simply copy pasted the same caption. But now the question says, and explain your choice with it. So you couldn't just copy it. You had to create yours and say why. Now, when you're making free response questions, you have to correctly word the stem. The stem could be a question straight away using verbs from the Bloom's taxonomy, with or without the tables, images, infographics, etc. And your scoring rubric or the marking scheme should be very, very clear about what answer is expected, what is the expected answer, and how many marks be awarded for it. So if you expected maybe 2 words, and those 2 words are there, you give 0.5 per word. If you're looking for certain key points, those points should be awarded marks. But what if the student writes something that you have not expected, and the answer is correct? What if a student writes something that you have not written in your marking scheme, but the answer is correct? For every such thing, you must mention in the marking scheme relevant points need to be considered and how many marks to be awarded. So these are samples that I have for you. Please go through them. Now, when we talk of free response questions, the stem should give rise to an intended response that can be scored. So obviously you're asking a particular question, and it should have a response with a rubric. The question should clearly state the length of the expected answer. Like I showed you in one of the examples, write in 200 words. So we are obviously expecting not more than 200 words in a particular answer. Instructions in the marking scheme should be clear so that there is no subjectivity involved in its interpretation. So I've shown you the example here. Award 0.5 marks for each of the 2 points, making it 1 mark. Or if it's a longer answer and you have 4 points or 5 points, at the end of it, you may choose to accept relevant points. Okay. The marks allotted should justify the cognitive processes involved in the answering of the question. And the marking scheme or the rubric should state the possible complete answer as well as breakup of marks for the expected parts in the answer. Somebody had just raised a hand. I would request you to note down your question. I can take it at the end of the session. Besides free response questions, besides multiple choice items, we have other types of questions. You can see essays, short answers, very short answers, objective types, and competency-based. So the answers may vary from 1 word, 1 blank, to a complete para, or maybe 100 words, 150 words, 200, 350, or even 500 words sometimes. When you talk about essay questions, it implies a written response which is sustained form of writing. The student is allowed to have freedom with respect to the words, length, and the organization of the answer. However, a distinction should be made between the essay type question used to measure knowledge and the essay type question used to test writing skills in language, which is also known as a writing task. So you can't have a simple knowledge testing question used as a writing task. Advantages You can see the ability, the skill that the student is putting in to organize, analyze, interpret facts, and other type of information, draw inferences based on what you are asking. Adopt an indigenous or an original approach to solve any particular problem that you want the students to solve. Defend their point of view through facts, data, and suitable arguments. So sometimes we do ask them for compare and contrast in an essay answer. Or critically examine the degree of adequacy, accuracy, and relevance of the available information in a given situation. So we need to actually think and plan what we want to ask in an essay type question. So some of the essay type questions could be like, why do sandy soils not hold enough water? Or explain any of the 4 sense organs and draw the diagrams, like a statement. Or you could be asking students to compare 2 questions. Give reasons why Roosevelt won the presidential elections in USA in 1932. The most important reason why Roosevelt won the presidential election was Hoover's unpopularity. Do you agree? Explain your point of view. So the student has a choice here to agree or disagree. So you look at question B there. The student has a choice and then support the statement. Coming to short answer questions. Now, when you're framing a short answer question, one has to keep in mind that the length of a shorter answer question has to be lesser word limit than an essay type of a question. So if your essay answer is going to be of 120 words, the short answer question cannot exceed 80 words. Essay type questions suffer from lack of objectivity and reliability sometimes. And objective type questions cannot be used for testing certain aspects of growth, like ability to express, summarize, organize ideas in a precise manner. But short answer questions are a very good medium for this. It's something in between the 2 extremes of objectives and essays. And if understood well, if framed well, they have the advantage of both the essay type and the objective type. Short answer questions can be used profitably in all tests. They help students to develop the ability of organizing and selecting relevant facts. So if you asked maybe causes of World War II in 80 words, there may be multiple causes, there may be a long history behind World War II, but the student has to gather only the relevant facts which fit into 80 words. It can be scored more objectively than the essay type questions and thereby ensure reliability. So somebody is writing something in the chat, but I will see it later. Then we have very short answer questions. Now, very short answer questions are those which have one specific testing point, can be marked quite objectively. It helps in testing knowledge of the examinee by asking him to supply a word, a phrase, a figure, or a sentence which is required for answering a question. Like I showed you the map of the world with some shaded areas. And I asked you to supply a word for what those shaded areas were called. And very happily, I received the answer as peninsula. So when I see that, I will automatically come to know that my students or my examinees have understood the concept. These are very short answer questions. They are answered in one word or one sentence. And normally takes about 2 minutes to answer, and it could be for 1 mark. So you have here define a relative pronoun, or you give an example and ask the students to identify the kind of pronoun, or why is this particular word called a relative pronoun? Give an example of a relative pronoun. So you could also have given an example and asked, I don't know what you mean by the clause that defines earnest money. Identify the relative pronoun, or identify the parts of speech in the underlying words. And you will automatically get the response. Now, when we come to objective type questions, I know I have done a complete session with Extra Mile on objective type questions, particularly multiple choice. But there are many, many kinds of objective type questions. We have alternate response type, we have matching type, and we have multiple choice items. So when you talk about alternative response type, we have true and false, we have right and wrong, saying yes or no. We have matching the type, where you have single matching, match the following, column 1 with column 2. Double matching, you have done column 1 and column 2, you have given options below, and the child has to choose, or a checklist, a matrix, or a fill in the blank. So we've done these types in an earlier training. And multiple choice of the question form and the incomplete statement form. So when we talk about alternative response types, the statement is given, the student is asked to either mark it true or false, yes or no, right or wrong, put a tick mark. Ice is lighter than water, true or false, or right or wrong. Both animals and plants are living things, true or false. Liquids do not have a definite shape, right or wrong. It's something very, very simple. Yes. Kamaluddin, Jamaluddin, assertion and reasoning is a very important form of questioning which has come up these days. I will deal with it. Match the following, single match and double match, where you are providing a stimuli in case of double match. So sometimes you may even need to match 3 columns. And setting objective type questions is more difficult than answering them. Okay. Then we have examples of single matching, column A and B. You can quickly do it in the chat. You may quickly do it in the chat. Okay, so I can see morning sunlight, summer season, day 24 hours, night stars. Beautiful, brilliant. I'll clap for all of you. This was simple type. Now I have given you column 1, column 2, column 3. And you have to match the behavior of the animal to the food. So you have rat, likes daylight but active at night. Oh, I can see so many things coming up in the chat. We move to the next question. You can do any one of the next. Come on. Match the columns. 3 are there now. You can do any one example. This is to show you that there is a stimuli. This is to show you there is a stimuli, and we've given you, like, you have to match the behavior of the animal with the food of the animal. Okay. So someone is telling me about the moth, and somebody is telling me 3 B on both sides, 1 DA. 1BA. Okay. You see, as educators, we are confused on what goes where. Imagine the condition of the student or the examiner. We have to be very clear in this case about the learning outcomes and the learning objectives we are going to be testing. So coming to the checklist type of questions, they're quick and easy to implement, but what are they? Students are provided with 2 or 3 alternatives as a checklist to make decisions about a number of statements on the basis of the checklist provided. So in many cases, we see consider statement A and B and choose the correct one or the incorrect one. So there are 2 statements. The student has to just check whether they are correct or incorrect. And we have provided 4 options. Only 1 is correct, only 2 is correct, 1 and 2 are both incorrect, and 1 and 2 are both correct. We've done that, and the student has to choose the best option. Assertion and reasoning is also done this way. But in assertion and reasoning, you have to give 2 statements, and while solving those 2 statements, you have to guide the students. So when you're practicing assertion and reasoning with the students, you have to tell them to read the assertion carefully and decide whether it is correct or incorrect. So whether A is true or A is false. Then you ask them to read the reason and choose whether the reason R is true or R is false. If assertion and reason A and R are both true, then you take the 3rd step of checking whether R explains A. However, if A is true and R is false, or R is true and A is false, the options are easier. Then you don't have to consider doing the 3rd step. In assertion and reasoning, you do the 3rd step of checking if R explains A only if both A and R are true. Checklists have some concerns. Limited information only indicating the presence of a skill. Does not indicate student response to different situations or provide specific examples of responses. Does not provide information about the context. Suggestions for implementation of checklist: add comments or columns, add value. Use this tool in conjunction with other modes. The checklist may not be suitable for the objectives that you as teachers may have in mind. And an excellent way of finding, recording, or specific behavior action comes up with a checklist. Somebody is telling me that A and R has been replaced by statements. Even if they are statements, like I told you, you're supposed to check if statement 1 is true, statement 2 is true, if both are true, or if both are false. If they are statements, then R explained A is not normally asked. Normally, in case of statements, they ask you if they are true or they are false, or identify the correct or the incorrect one. Normally, in 2 statements, they don't ask you to explain if the second one is the reason for the first one. But in assertion and reasoning, they would ask you to explain if both are true and R is the reason of A. Okay. Then we have simple things here. For each of the following matters, use the letter to indicate whether it's a solid, liquid, or gas. And quite quickly, the students would be expected to write solid, liquid, or gas. Now, there are matrix kind of questions which are also included in our papers. More than 2 responses are linked to a particular stimuli. In such type of items, stimuli are presented vertically in rows, wherein responses are presented horizontally in columns. And students are asked to check each cell in which the response on the top is true for each of the stimuli alongside. You would have this kind of a thing. Science teachers use the matrix more often than others. So which of the vitamins causes which of the deficiencies? So below in each of this, you can put a tick mark or something. So vitamin A causes dash. Night blindness is a very common answer. You can put over there a tick mark. So this kind of a thing works very well. In case if some of you are playing those online games where you have clues to solve, they also give you these kind of questions. Who murdered X? And they'll give you clues with different names and where those people were. And then you have to put a tick if it matches and a cross on the rest, and finally you arrive at who killed X. Fill in the blanks. In this type of question, a statement is provided in which one word or two words at different places are removed, and students are asked to fill in with appropriate words. So leaves give out water vapor throughout the process of dash. Here you can see the options: transpiration and photosynthesis. And then motion, Payal ma'am says transpiration. Motion in a straight line is called dash motion, rectilinear or periodic. So you have to choose, okay, Payal ma'am here again says rectilinear. So, and I can see a whole lot of people now writing rectilinear. Congratulations to all of you. And when you see these kind of questions, there are options given. On other occasions, the examiner may not put in options. The paper setter may not put in options. There will just be a blank and the student is expected to fill it. So incomplete statements testing instructional objectives identify relationships. The character shared by the whale and a bat is the possession of the hair, wings, limbs, neck, etc. So obviously the student who studied the whale and the bat knows the answers. Completion type is useful for testing expression in language. I was so worried, dash. To complete that sentence. Or the analogies. What limestone is to marble, coal to. So you would need to fill in the analogies. Then you have map studies, location and label questions that we normally give in geography, history, etc. On a map of the world, show Sydney or locate and label the Colorado Desert. Sometimes the language, in languages also, such questions can be used for picking key ideas, keywords, sentences, synonyms, antonyms from passages. Transformation types, like in language, write and reported speech, change the voice or identify the voice. Synthesis, transformation of sentences. All of these can also be tested in this particular format. Then we have the most petrifying questions, which are the picture-based questions. Obviously, here you see the simpler ones, but in the paper, depending on the subject we teach, the questions vary. So here you can see 3 images. What are the occupations of the following? The student just has to match the occupation with the picture. Coming back to assertion and reasoning, you can see here there are 2 statements, A and R. Select the most appropriate answer. So to increase the range of an ammeter, we must connect a suitable resistance in series to it. The ammeter with increased range should have high resistance. So first you have to identify if A is true, then R is true. If both are true, then does R explain A or R is not the correct explanation of A? That is step 3. By chance, if you already identified either A being false or R being false, then you choose a relevant option directly. You can teach students this trick of elimination when you are teaching assertion and reasoning type of questions. Importance of competency-based questions in our classrooms, where we are creating a thinking classroom with our classroom within our classroom with competency-based questions. It's all about less spoon feeding and much more thinking about logical consequences, nullifying logical controversies. It's all about logical consequences, nullifying logical controversies, rejection and acceptance to enhance critical and creative thinking. So there's one more question which you can use in your classrooms while teaching. How would the world change if humans could do photosynthesis? Now, this is asking the child to think. Humans, photosynthesis, how would the world change? Or today's think shot has a larger, which of the two vehicles has a larger hippocampus? London's taxi drivers or London's bus drivers? So there has been a lot of research. Students can go through it. Or one morning, you can ask students to design the breakfast that Virat Kohli would have had before a cricket match. So you could just think about it. It talks about nutrition and and then you can come to something like what students should carry in their tiffins, because if they're designing Virat Kohli's breakfast, they already know the nutrition that is required for the human body. So who is accelerating faster? Which car is accelerating faster? An F1 car, an ant, or something that's impossible to determine? So you need to think. Or you can have a wow question each morning to arouse curiosity, with which you can come up with questions in your exam papers too. A spider and a cockroach are walking on the sand in a desert. Assume that both have the same weight and the same size of the legs. Which one would leave a deeper footprint on the sand and why? Spider and a cockroach walking in the sand. So there's a lot to think, right? So the answer, the spider has 8 legs, cockroach has 6. Spider applies same force as its weight on a larger area. And the sand is more than the cockroach. Therefore, the cockroach will apply more pressure on the sand and leave a deeper footprint. Predict the misconception. Somebody seems to be throwing a ball at A, B, and C. Identify where the ball is accelerating, assuming there's no air, no gravity, drag on the ball. And you see 4 options here. These are the kind of practice questions we should be actually giving our students in the classroom. So the correct answer was in part A and B. The misconception was part B and C. So with this, I would like to thank Dr. Salam and Dr. Biju Pillai sir for giving me the opportunity to take on this session today and to interact with all of you brilliant educators. Thank you so much. I would like to extend my gratitude to Extra Mile Education and Training for this wonderful platform where educators learn and grow each day. Thank you very much. And I make a humble submission to all the brilliant educators who've been with me this evening. Thank you. Over to you, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you so much, ma'am. We have a few set of questions from our educators. So there was one question put up by Saujanya ma'am, how to take questions for slow learners.
Okay. So how do you take questions or how do you make questions?
Yeah, how to make questions for slow learners is that what she asked.
Yeah. The questions would normally have the same typology. If you've noticed a board paper, they don't have separate questions for them. However, slow learners and all the categories under CWSN or children with special needs, except for the visually impaired, have the same category, the same typology of questions, but they get extra time, or depending on the category of CWSN, they get special privileges. Only the visually impaired students have certain other questions in case of visual interpretations. So they would not get picture questions, they would not get maps, but they would get other direct questions instead.
Yeah, thank you. And I would request the audience to
Excuse
actually
me.
raise hand.
Slow learners will definitely have, if there are 100 questions, about 30 to 40% questions are answerable by slow learners. If you follow the Bloom's taxonomy, you can see there are questions which test their memory, remembrance, and understanding. These questions can be they are aimed at for the slow learners to answer. So every question will have a set number of questions from the Bloom's taxonomy, the lowest strata, that is understanding and remembrance, that can be answered by the slow learners. Am I right, ma'am?
Yes, absolutely, sir.
Thank you, sir. I would request audience to ask questions. You can probably raise your hands and we'll unmute you. Any questions from audience?
And one more thing, madam was talking about competency, and we showed 9, 10, 11, 12. That doesn't mean that this competency is applicable for only those students who are from 9 to 12. It is applicable to the lower classes as well. And
yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
In fact, in most schools who follow the board pattern, competency-based questions start at a very lower grade. Maybe class 4 upwards, many schools have started with competency-based questions. And schools who have opted for SAFL tests have obviously done the same in grade 3, 5, and 8 as
well. Salam, sir, can we move further? I think the educators have actually...
Any questions? Yeah, questions will be there. They will be raising their hands, I think. Otherwise, they can put it in the chat box also.
Yeah.
We have opened the chat box for you. And definitely, as madam has said, schools have started giving emphasis to competency-based questions, and madam has included a lot of inputs with regard to competency. What type of questions can be asked, and we could see mostly illustrative and data-based questions. You can see so that that makes the student think and answer. Nowadays, while learning by heart, they cannot score marks. Their competency they have to prove by solving the problem. So there should be enough problem. There should not be enough room for students to think and answer. And we are pretty sure that schools have been guiding students with competency-based questions. Highlighting their thinking skills to develop their thinking skills. And if any student is going to face the board exam in a very traditional learning in a very traditional way, then we are very sorry that he will have to be disappointed, because time and again it is proved from board exams and all that competency matters a lot. And CBSE and NCERT, they are increasing, the boards are increasing the weightage of competency year by year. This year it is 50, it may go to 60 next time. What do you say, Kathy ma'am?
Absolutely, yeah. Sir. Yeah. And we have a question too in the chat. Somebody is asking for if the board will provide sample question papers based on this pattern, but I think the board has already put up the sample question papers on its website long ago, sometime in September. So the educators who would like to go through these kind of question papers may download the same from the CBSE academic.nic.in website.
Also, so first free ma'am, there are a few questions, I think, in the chat box.
Yeah. So there's one question. Shefali ma'am is asking, any particular trait which differentiates an assertion from a reasoning?
Ma'am, assertion is always mentioned as A and her reasoning is always mentioned as R in the paper. So the student is not to distinguish whether it is an assertion or a reasoning. The student has to tell us as paper setters whether the reason explains the assertion and whether the assertion and the reasoning are both true. That's what I said. When you see an assertion question, you first help the student decide whether the statement is true or false. If either the assertion or the reason is false, there is one option which says A is true, R is false, R is true, A is false. It'll immediately select that option. However, only if the assertion and the reason are both true. In such a situation, the student has to do step number 3, trying to prove if the reason is the
Correct
or
explanation.
for the assertion.
Yes.
Sometimes both statements may be true, but the reason may not be the cause of the assertion.
Yeah.
There is a Veena ma'am who's raised her hand.
Yeah, Veena ma'am.
Yeah, I actually, ma'am, sorry to interrupt you, but I was filling the form. By the time the chat, I was paying. I'm sorry to say all this, but now the chat is disabled.
Ma'am, you'll get the link. You'll get the link again.
The link is posted several times. Now also we have posted it. Everybody can see. Okay, let's wind up, Shri ma'am.
Yeah, sure, sir. So I would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude and appreciation to Ms. Kathy Dwarkadas ma'am for an enlightening and insightful discourse. I'm confident that now we are better equipped to prepare question paper and have also understood the art of making it. And I'm sure that the children are going to enjoy the process of examination. So dear participants, please note that the link for the certificate and the feedback form has already been shared in the meeting chat. Kindly complete the form with all the necessary details. On behalf of Extra Mile Education and Training and BTAG, I, Shubhashri Madhavan, would like to express my sincere thanks to Ms. Kathy Dwarkadas ma'am for sharing her valuable insights and words of wisdom. I also would like to share a special thanks to Dr. Abdul Salam sir for his unwavering support and for providing the wonderful opportunity. And last but not the least, a huge thank you to all the participants for your incredible enthusiasm. We sincerely hope we have earned the privilege of your time. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kathy ma'am, once again for
Thank you, sir.
very nice session, very informative session with lots of inputs, and hope all the participants. This time we got a lot of response from participants. They want to know how question papers can be set very meticulously and very effectively. Hope they have been enlightened by Kathy ma'am's presentation. It was a very nice presentation. Thank you so much for your time and the valuable time. Now everybody is busy nowadays with board exam preparation and all. So, but this is very important and it is very useful for all the educators. So thank you so much, Kathy ma'am, once again, and a huge round of applause to you from all the participants who have gathered. And Shubhashri ma'am, thank you so much for your help, your wonderful presence, and your leading the session, and your time, and you have spared. We have been in discussion for a few days. So thank you so much for preparing
My pleasure,
for it.
sir.
Yeah, and thank you all the educators. Thank you, Biju sir, and all. Please be in touch with us. You can ask questions. Still, we can ask questions through the WhatsApp groups or emails. Be connected to us. Thank you so much. Have a good night, everybody. Good night, ma'am. Good night,
Good
Shubhashri
night.
ma'am.
Good night, sir. Good night, ma'am.
Good night, sir. Good night, ma'am.
everyone.
Thank you so much.